All right. We are here, and I think we're going to release on time this time.
Hopefully, we'll see how it works.
Yeah.
Well, let's get through some reviews real quick.
Yeah. We only got a handful.
Light Hero Kaiser. Most interesting, great chapter mate. Can't wait for more. The mother of Shenron got me good, and this just proves the fact that Akurui is one of the best characters in this story. Light. I don't think I have anything to add or joke about this time. Wow, this hasn't happened before.
Why? This is a first for you. Color me impressed.
Oh, shut up. No one asked for your input.
Blade Hero Light and Bow Hero Impact signing out. It happens,
All
man.
right. Thank you, Kaiser. All right, Joe Clone. Happy times all around. Glad we're returning to where we need to be. Kurai needs some R&R so badly, and this was absolutely full of R&R and cozy, cheesy moments. Little Airy, girls jealous, Shuken getting blown out, Mina revealing the engagement. Aww. The only moment that got...
Real quick, I think Shuken getting blown out was one of, if not my favorite parts to write.
I enjoyed hearing it. The only moment that got heavy were the stuff surrounding Blake, but I feel like it's the perfect place to resolve the issues. If not, then when?
If not now, then when?
If not now, then when? Also, the cryptic and haunting reveal of future Blake's death was chilling. Absolutely could see that happening in the animation. 2D or 3D? Take your pick.
Personally, I go with 2D. I don't know. I feel like it's a lot easier to get cleaner animations when you do. Like, how do I put that? I think a good example of this is the Dragon Ball Super movies. Like the Dragon Ball Superhero, like the one with Gohan and Piccolo and all that. That one looked good. It was in 3D, and it looked good for what it was. But take the Broly movie.
Oh,
that's
gorgeous.
2D. That like used 3D art very sparingly. Oh my goodness! Like
the music
visually,
was also phenomenal.
the music was great. But just on visuals alone, like it's the best Dragon Ball film.
Oh, 100%.
So like I don't know. I feel like I feel like 2D carries this kind of storytelling a little more effectively. Like I admire Montiome for his ambition and what he did. It certainly paved the way for a new medium in terms of art. But to me, my personal aesthetic is still 2D.
Yeah. Thanks for another great chapter. We'll wait anxiously for the next one. See you then.
All right. Well, the new chapter's coming up soon once we get through Silly Kira's review. Oh boy.
My goodness. Well, thank you, Joe Clone. Let's do Silly Kita.
Do you need me to take this one?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Silly Kita writes, I feel like an alternate title for this chapter could have been Homecoming. I mean that in the sense that we've already seen / felt the emotional tumult of seeing Kurai reunited with his friends. Not to say this chapter wasn't loaded with good emotional payoffs. Sorry, I lost my spot. Just that the title itself didn't seem quite right to me. I submit the title above as I have because not only do we have Kurai coming home, we also have Eri doing some of the same. I know that she has been living on campus for some time now, but that conversation that the two of them have at the beginning of the chapter kind of lends me to the idea that she hasn't really felt at home until now, for a number of reasons that I'm sure both you or I could list. Yeah, I think, yeah, you know, you're not wrong. There's definitely something to be said for that. She's certainly, like, had a lot of relief, you know, being surrounded by these people, and like, you know, she's able to wake up and be like, okay, they're all right. We have a chance at stopping what's to come. But I think you're right that she hasn't really felt home up until now. So let's see. Goes on to say, sorry, I didn't mean to start this off on a negative note. Just something that wouldn't quit in my head. This is a great chapter. I appreciate that. I mean. Yeah, to me, Reunion still seems the appropriate title, but I can definitely see where you're coming from with the homecoming bit. Let's see. I especially loved Kurai sussing out that it was Dad Zawa who made the arrangements for the party, even if the original idea was Mina's. Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Dad Zawa for the win.
Dad Zawa's a beast. That guy's great. Let's see. Also, how we got to see Ingenium back on his feet. That was special. I mean, that's one of his heroes. I feel like it could almost be equated to seeing All Might somehow make a comeback for Deku. There are a few parallels. In Ginium, All Might represented the kinds of heroes that both boys wanted to be. Both men gave up a great deal for them to be able to become heroes. In Ginium, in taking the heat for the Yakuza member who got killed and giving up parts for his arms so that Kurai could have a new one built, and All Might with One for All. I do appreciate the poignancy of the scene, and not having it drawn out too long made it very palatable. Honestly, I hadn't thought about those parallels. But how do I put this? Like, to Kurai, like, Gang Orca is still his number one hero, but, like, yeah, and Genium means a great deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tenya can hug people in public and not implode? Maybe have Akururi check that it's not Toga in disguise. Oh, man. Shuken being in the mix was a great time, too. I always love the byplay that happens between him and his cousins, and I do hope we get to see him again soon. Poor dude was way in over his head trying to hit on a group of girls that had Jiro in it, of all people. That said, I could personally see him working with Yui Kodai if he follows his cousin's lead in the idea that opposites attract. Mataris, I leave it to you to explain to your wife which one she is and why they might or might not work, depending on your own opinion / interpretation of her character.
I love that you knew that I would need that explained. That I was literally about to say, who is that?
So she essentially was... So her design is kind of based off of one of the earlier Uraraka designs. So she's the girl in Class B who she wears a red baseball cap with her or a red cap with her costume. She's got black hair, black eyes, and like very very quiet, like hardly says anything.
Okay. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, she's the one who she can make stuff shrink or expand.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, that might be kind of interesting. I see where you're going with. Like the opposites attract thing, because Shuken's very lively. You know, he can jump in. He can jump into the joke. He's very comfortable in any number of social situations. And I don't think Yui is like uncomfortable in social situations, but she's like definitely still very quiet. So like following Kurai's example, yeah, I can see how you would draw that conclusion.
Okay.
Honestly, I hadn't thought too much about what Shuken's love life would look like. Maybe I'll get to that at some point down the line, but it's not something that I had honestly thought a whole lot about.
Yeah.
But no, it's not a bad idea. Let's see. Goes on to say, so Kurai is still only superhuman. It was interesting to have a more serious scene amid all the good vibes and comedy, but I like how you showed that even though he's capable of wielding a significantly more powerful version of One for All than Deku, he still needs to grow into it a little more. Him losing to the others in arm wrestling was an interesting way to do that, as it takes quirks out of the equation and shows how they measure up to one another on a more human level, all without an overt feeling of them having their arms tied behind their backs, so to speak. Yeah. Sorry, I'm having to drink some soda because my blood sugar just will not stop dropping these days. Now I'm trying to figure out how to account for that. I always find it very, like, I'm grateful to a scene, as weird as this sounds. I am grateful when a scene lines up that allows me to, I don't want to say like accomplish multiple things in one, because like that's what I try to go for a lot of the time, but I'm very grateful whenever a scene allows me to blend humor with a serious subject without it being awkward or like super obvious that I'm trying to drive this point, or I'm just trying really hard to be funny to the point where it's like, this isn't funny anymore, dude. And this is one of those situations where like, yeah, I think it lined up really nicely. Like they're kind of like, they're kind of like, Yairozu makes them hold the tournament outside because she doesn't want to make another table after because the last time they did this, Kirishima and Kurai broke the table. She doesn't want to have them do that again, so she sends them outside. But we kind of get that moment of Kurai being like, "Nah," he's like, "Nah, using One for All at 100% still kind of beat me up." And like Deku is like without, if you take quirks out of the equation, Deku is physically stronger than Kurai at this point. So that's kind of, yeah. I wanted a humanizing moment for Kurai, because like obviously he's a step above most people in the world. Like, that's just the nature of his power. That's and even with the even before the quirks got exchanged, that has been the case for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I don't get a whole lot of opportunities to kind of not humiliate, but humble him a little bit. And with this situation playing out the way that it did, I'm glad that I was able to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe it's just me, but the Monoma Pinata scene was too funny. What absolutely sent me was the realization that Ren is just standing there watching the whole thing unfold with this absolute deadpan look on his face because Jean roped him into it, and his friend is probably grinning like an idiot the whole way through. Just, I don't know, the dichotomy of that pair's friendship will never not be funny. Yeah, I always enjoyed scenes with Jean and Ren because, like, it's a really cool bromance that they have going on. Like, like when Jean's feeling awkward about girls, first person he talks to is Ren. And, like, their personalities are not similar in any capacity whatsoever. But something about them, they just click. And I love it.
Is Ren the one with the multicolored hair?
Yeah, he's the one with the with the pink stripe. He's the one that Monty Owen voiced. The one that Monty Owen voiced.
That's what I thought. He's like one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, he's a great character. Monty Owen designed him to basically be Monty in his own story. I thought it was really great that they, well, not great, but given the circumstances, I'm glad that they were able to have his brother come on and take over the voice, because they do sound incredibly similar.
Yeah.
Like, the differences are there if you listen for it, kind of like with Mako and Greg Baldwin playing Iroh. So real quick side trip into The Last Airbender. Did you know that on the Ember Island Players episode,
yes,
the voice actor for Stage Zuko, that's Dante Brasco's brother?
That's funny.
I'm like, that's amazing.
That's really funny.
I'm like, I don't know if Dante Bosco, like, I haven't looked this up, but I'm like, I wonder if Dante Bosco's brother is a voice actor or if they brought him along specifically for that.
That's so funny.
Either way, it's awesome. Sorry, that's just kind of what that reminded me of.
That's hilarious.
Let's see.
My honor.
Honor!
That is so funny.
Friend Zuko, we must have a talk about your hair. It's gone too much. Let's see. Ochako loves Suzuku. It's here, folks. It's really here. I'm so happy. I mean to say, it's about damn time.
About damn time. All right.
Sorry. I'll try again. I think the knowledge that they've loved one another in this sense has been there for a while, but it's very nice to see it laid out plainly, and not just for the audience, but also them as characters. If you had to pick a moment in this canon, could you say when each one of them actually fell in love with the other? I'm very curious to know. Ooh. Let me think about that.
That's a hard one because they're not the center of the story.
Yeah, Uraraka was definitely at some point. It was at some point before the summer camp for her. Like, even if she wouldn't admit it, maybe she didn't love him. Like, she definitely.
I feel like
liked
she had
him.
A crush on him at that point.
She was crushing. She was crushing pretty hard because, like, during summer camp was when Kurai talked to her. I was like, hey, if you have something here, you should do something with it. But yeah, I don't know. That's a really hard question.
Yeah, we'll have to pose that to everybody else what they think, because I'm
gonna actually. You know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna say it was when she started getting ready for Deku's birthday in this canon, because she's given how much she was like kind of like worried about like her kind of messing it up for him. Because she was like, I've never had a boyfriend, and this is Deku's. This is our first birth. This is his first birthday with me, and I want to make sure it's really good for him. And like just how much effort she put into trying to figure out, like, because at that point she knew that, like, in this canon, at that point she knew that he had been quirkless.
Yeah.
So like what that would have done to him growing up, like even if he didn't say it, you can kind of guess.
Yeah.
So like I think that like because him confiding in her. Him and Kurai confiding in her and Mina about One for All and all that probably was a big step in that direction.
Yeah.
But I want to say that she realized, like, she was definitely in love with him by the time the birthday thing rolled around.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I could. I don't think I could pin it on one moment.
Okay.
But if like that's as close as I can get. I hope that answers the question. Supportive friends being supportive is always great to see, and having some of the boys getting their hackles up was pretty funny. I do like that everyone turns out to be congratulatory of the pair, despite their own individual feelings on the matter, if nothing else, because they know that Kurai has had more than a hard time of it, and Mina by proxy, and they just deserve whatever happiness they can get in this life.
Nice.
Speaking of individual feelings, Blake. This poor girl. I almost want to be mad at the multiple love interests for one guy dragging on trope, but because of who she is and the way she's handled this whole thing, I honestly can't find it in me to be anything other than sympathetic for her plight. I think what sets this one entanglement in particular is that I genuinely get the sense that Blake loves Kurai selflessly and has no selfish thoughts that she would act on concerning him. Mostly it's cases where the girl, or guy, has an interest for reasons that are largely, if not purely, selfish, with little to no regard for what a confession would do to the subject of interest, much less their significant other. She's still trying to figure out how to be okay with these feelings that she has, but she's doing everything she can not to rope Kurai into her personal drama. That's really incredible of her, and I hope she gets a happy ending at the end of all this, one that she'll feel genuinely good about, and not something that she just settled for because she couldn't have Kurai. I have no earthly idea how you would go about pulling that off at this point, but you have yet to give me a reason to doubt your plans. Yeah, I got a plan for that.
Ooh.
I do. I don't... How do I put this? I don't know that everybody's going to be okay with the way that it plays out in its entirety, if I'm being honest, but...
Really?
It's honestly, it's going to be kind of a 50-50. Like, I have a plan for it. I think it's a good way to go. I think it's what the character. I think it's what the character would end up. The characters involved would end up doing, and I think it's where the story should go. If that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have no idea where he's going with this, so
yeah,
I'm as clueless as you guys.
But yeah, I do have a like. I'm not expecting people to hate it, but. Let me rephrase that. I don't think anybody's going to hate it. I just don't think... I don't know that people are going to like it as much as I do. And like that, like...
Now I'm really curious.
It's like... It's interesting to me because I know not everybody's going to like something that I do as much as I do. Because obviously everybody's different from me. But like, one of the reasons I write is because I want people to enjoy the story as much as I would if I were reading it. And not having written it, if that makes sense. Like I want to write the kinds of stories that I would want to read. Yeah. And enjoy. So, but again, that's not the same as what everybody else wants or would need out of a story. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll say no more on that for the time being, but I do have a plan there. Side note: the conversation between her and Yang was really sweet. I didn't get any romantic tension from it, nor do I imagine that you'll be taking that route. Ha! No. Just a friend being truly concerned about her teammate and being there for her as she needed it.
Thank you.
It's kind of easy to forget that this is the girl who practically raised Ruby when you give her a cursory look. But she's got a mama side to her that's very sweet and caring, and I feel like a lot of people who write her character fail to properly utilize that aspect of her. She really did everything right in this situation as far as I can tell. She let Blake know that help was available, but she didn't push her to accept it in that instant, because she knew that no progress would be made that way. At the same time, she was also able to tell Blake how important it was for both her and Kurai that she bite the bullet and go be happy for his happiness, if nothing else. She didn't force Blake to confront every aspect of her turmoil, but she did show her friend that she is, or at least will be someday, strong enough to grow beyond it. Honestly, Yang Xiaolong gets MVP for this chapter. Yeah, I can see that. So many fun things in this chapter. But Yang is honestly a fun character because you can just have her be goofy, and it's absolutely in character for her. But when it really gets down to it, and you need a serious character, she surprisingly fills the role. Oh yeah, and the fact that they say this is like kind of. The only surprise is that you forget that she can be like this. Yeah. Because you know in the back of your, it's like you know her backstory. You know that in the back of her head, she basically helped raise her sister after her mom ditched them, and then Ruby's mom died.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of had to step up for that.
Yeah.
And she kind of acts like an airhead a lot of the time, but she's probably not the most book smart, but she's good people.
Mm-hmm.
To put it bluntly, to put it simply,
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, I don't know what I'm trying to say now.
No, I get that. Sorry, it's relatable. It's the childhood trauma masking with the silliness.
Okay, yeah, that's what it is. Let's see. Kira goes on to say, All Might and Aizawa seem like they're getting along a little better again. I mean, it seems as though Aizawa's letting loose on the leash, even if just a little. So, progress? Yeah, there's some progress being made there. All Might's trying to put in the effort is like, okay, like the students that have one for all, they're not the only important ones. He's got to invest in all these guys.
Yeah.
Let's see. Eri taking a minute to do what she could to spare Mina and Kurai unnecessary pain was also an excellent scene. I find it very interesting how half the time Eri is looking up to the people who are surrounding her and wanting to learn all she can from them, and the other half, she almost understands them better than they do themselves. All that said, it still feels like the same girl in both kinds of situations, so props for character consistency. Yeah, it's like traumatized characters present a lot of different character facets that you can make use of and still have it be consistent. I don't know, maybe that's why I liked writing traumatized characters so much.
Well, they're more interesting.
Yeah, if I was gonna write a story about an average Joe who just went about an average life, what's the point of that?
Well, I think
everybody's got that.
To me, it's very interesting that you chose Mina because she's super chill. She's got a pretty normal childhood up till this point, and she's just kind of your if anyone's a Gary Stu up until this point, it's Mina. But then she's living life with all of these people, and she's she's special.
Yeah.
But I think that's why she's a really interesting character to have, just kind of like how Uraraka is nothing super crazy special aside from her love interest. And that makes her more important.
Her ability is pretty impressive.
Well, yeah, her ability is cool.
But when you put it among all the other, all the amazing people...
it pales in comparison, but
well, everybody kind
of
pales when it's, Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki.
But she's special because of her connection to them.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. I don't like it when people are like, oh, Uraraka's only interesting because of her love interest. I'm like, excuse you for a minute here.
No, I mean, she's cool.
Yeah,
I'm just...
I honestly, one of my favorite scenes with her is when Deku and Ida ask her, what's your motivation for becoming a hero? She's like, I want money. And they're kind of like, wait, what? And she's honest with them. She's like, yeah. If we're getting down to, we're getting down to it. I want to have the money. And, initially that sounds selfish, but then, she explains
How many medical school students have you met who have the exact same answer? I want to say 9 out of 10 medical students I have met. That is why it's more of a security thing than
it's a job security.
People.
Yep. But it's both.
It's unfortunate, but for her it is both. But
because she doesn't want the money for herself, she wants it for her parents.
But she also feels safe enough with them that she can answer truthfully.
Yes.
Instead of just BSing it.
No one can accuse Uraraka of being duplicitous.
No, absolutely not.
And I appreciate that about her character. Let's see. Your Hero Academia Enmity, huh? Well, if we've got the war arc coming in, the name makes sense to me. I'll be looking forward to it. Unleashed has been a very fun arc, especially considering what happened in Renewal. Happy writing until the next one. See you guys in Pokemon Warpath.
All right.
So, for quick context, I'm sure those of you that follow in fanfiction have seen that the story got broken up into more novel-length things. The phase that we were ending on with this chapter coming up is Your Hero Academia Unleashed. The next arc falls under the name of Enmity. And we'll go more to, we'll get through the definition of that word and everything either later in this podcast or at the beginning of the next one. But for now, enjoy the final chapter of this phase.
All right.
I've been wandering in my mind lately. I've been looking for a place to rest my head, for the road that lies ahead. Always fighting for the ones beside me. You could try it, but her heart's so far from dead. You will believe it. I look at fear in the eye, yes, we met before. Stirring every lie, someone's at the door. You keep walking the line, I stuck to the floor. Nothing wrong in my mind, I've always wanted more. I've been walking on coals high for my whole life. Gotten better to bruise just to get it right. Climbing every hilltop through pain and strife. But when my summit is reached, I'll be out of sight. And I'll keep holding on, holding on. Building the life that I've been dreaming. Holding on, carrying my heart to the end. And they'll say, who was wrong, who was wrong? Will I reach the heights I'm scaling? I'll rise above, sowing the fire within. Sowing the fire within.
Two heroes. Naming moves after zodiac signs. I have to say, I didn't see that one coming. I thought it made sense to name my new moves after constellations, given the nature of the quirk. Plus, it was my future self who technically came up with these moves. I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I just didn't think I'd see you break off from All Might's patterns so willingly. Kurai grinned before he added, should we let our hero professor know that he's losing his number one fan? It's not that, Izuku insisted as he set aside his lunch bowl. It's just, after I thought you were gone, I kept remembering what I thought would be our last conversation, about how you were the one to teach me that we don't need to become the people we admire to be heroes. Given that and the fact that I now have your old quirk, it made sense for me to start over, at least a little bit. It had been about a week since the World Hero Alliance had been disbanded and Humorize had been routed. Some of the leaders had managed to escape custody, but with Fleck Turn in jail along with the majority of his chief lieutenants, the leadership of the cult had been shattered, leaving their followers with little clue as to what they should do next. Humorize was effectively robbed of its power to cause harm on a global, and in most cases even local, trouble. Now most of the young heroes were taking the time to relax while they could. Classes had resumed, but everyone had been given 2 weeks of leave from their work studies while the pros tried to reorganize their affairs following the global assault. Kurai had to attend some makeup sessions considering his academics, and he was hard at work in the gym to rebuild the physique he'd had before the events of Nabu Island, but today he was making a point to spend a full lunch hour with his friends. He's just teasing you, Mina giggled at the pair. Besides, he hardly has room to talk given his new moveset's names. Hey! The silver-haired student protested while Ochako let out a little laugh of her own. I was already the Guardian hero before the quirk exchange happened. You know it's a Star Wars reference. I'm keeping with my old theme just fine. Your old theme had moves taken from how many manga? The pink girl countered. 3, her fiancé admitted. Naruto, Dragon Ball, and Sword Art Online. I kind of know the first two, but not the last one, Ochako interjected. He just likes it because there's a lot of cute girls all fawning over this one guy who looks kind of like him before he got snow hair. Mina teased, causing him to roll his eyes upwards. That is a lie, and you know it, he deadpanned. The artwork is pretty. No, not just the girls. And I like the story most of the time. It's no Naruto, I can tell you that right now. Speaking of Naruto, didn't you use another move from that show after your quirks got swapped? Mina replied, her teasing grin still in place. You can't do the Rasengan anymore, but there's that one thing that Sasuke used a lot that looked awfully familiar after you tore a helicopter in half. The Chidori. Kurai sighed. Yeah, that's from Naruto. After a moment of consideration, he reluctantly added, the Grievous Barrage also took some inspiration from that series. Some inspiration? She started to tease him before a brief frown flitted across her brow. Wait, which one was... He cleared out the overcast sky that was supposed to last 2 days with that move. Eri interjected as she sat down with the rest of them, having put away her dishes. Almost took down Fleck Turn, too. Didn't take 3 of you guys to actually do it? Ochako inquired, looking at Izuku when she did. We thought we had him, but then he used Trigger to enhance his powers, her boyfriend explained. After that, there was no way Kurai and I would have been able to win against him without any more help. And without Eri, we would definitely not have been able to stop the bombs in time, Kurai added.
To the raven-haired girl, he grinned and added, "To the 11th goes the victory once more." "You go, girl," Mina chirped, causing Aerie to redden with embarrassment. "Saving the world once would be awesome enough, but you've done it twice now." "The first time was more of an accident than anything, and I couldn't have won against Humor Eyes on my own," she protested. "It took the Three Musketeers to do it." "Three Musketeers?" Mina asked with a quizzical smile. "Yeah, it's what Kurai called us when we were fighting Flecht." Izuku nodded. "I liked it." "Of course you did, Deku," Ochako giggled. "Well, we're not exactly the big three of UA just yet," Kurai shrugged in response. "But at the time, it seemed like it would be kind of cool to have some gravitas to our group's name." "I thought we were going to be Team Lightning Drop," Mina protested as she playfully shoved Kurai's shoulder. "You two trying to trade us out?" "It's not like that," Izuku protested again, which led to everyone else at the table laughing at him. "For real, though, we should have Aerie as another member of our agency," Ochako said cheerily, drawing everyone's attention back to her. "We'd be unbeatable with you guys working together." "Let's make sure we beat Shigaraki and company before we start solidifying those plans," Aerie cautioned them. "Don't get me wrong, working on a hero team with the four of you would be a dream come true. But if there's one thing I learned in the future, it was not to count on tomorrow as a certainty." There was a slightly awkward pause before Kurai stirred and said, "My vestige says that if we don't believe in tomorrow, why should we bother fighting for today?" The others swung their gazes toward him, even as Izuku mused. "It's kind of weird to think that your own vestige exists inside your head." "Yours does too, technically," his friend pointed out. "One for All doesn't reside in your body, but you've still been able to hear the vestiges from time to time. Your imprint and All Might's both keep you connected to the Quark after it left, even though you're still alive." "Yeah, but it's still weirder that you basically have your own ghost haunting you," Mina told him right before her eyes grew wide and a huge grin broke out on her face. "Dude, that would be such a great plot for a movie! Think of the comedy material!" "You are not allowed to source me as a reference for that film," Kurai muttered, causing his fiancée to visibly deflate. "Party pooper," she grumbled, though the smile on her face more or less ruined the attempt to pout. "I want you to think about what you just told me, and then I suggest you do your utmost to reword it in a manner that portrays an accurate retelling of events as opposed to a shaky narrative that, quite ineffectually, absolves you of guilt in the scenario." The dock worker quailed under the piercing glare of the speaker, a young man dressed in a bright red cloak. Well, he seemed to be glaring anyway. It was actually somewhat difficult to make out any distinct features of the visitor from how low the cowl on his garb hung. If nothing else, the borderline growl lurking in the back of his throat did nothing to soothe the rattled nerves of his words' recipient at the moment. "I swear, everything I know about the incident is in the report I submitted to the police," the dock worker protested as a cold sweat gathered at the nape of his shirt. "I came out to do inventory this morning. One of the crates that had those freaking bombs was wide open. The payload's missing. No one was around. Security tapes were scrubbed, and that's all I know." "No, it isn't." The cloaked individual snorted as his hand came to rest on the hilt of a sword that could be seen protruding from the folds of the fabric and shrouding his body. "There's something else that you know. But I'll get to that in a minute. Show me the container and the previous night's inventory match with the updated one from this morning." Why should I show you anything?" The dock worker blustered as the newcomer began to move away from him, heading for the shipping yard where hundreds of containers all sat, waiting for the ships that would come and bear their contents to far off as of yet unknown recipients. "You acted like you got some kind of authority. Last I checked, detectives don't dress like that, and heroes don't—" "I don't care what you think heroes do." The newcomer interrupted curtly over his shoulder, a drift of wind rustling his cloak just enough to show that the sword was now a half-inch out of its sheath, prompting all the potential bravado to leave the dock worker, as well as emptying his mouth of all moisture. "Whether I'm a civilian, a detective, a hero, or a villain, neither my identity nor my societal role concerns you. I told you to do something, and if you want to keep all of your digits attached to your body, you'll do it." With only a half-second more of protest, the worker clammed his mouth shut, bustled past the stranger, and made a beeline through the yard, straight for the container he had reported as broken into as of that morning. "This is it," he panted as he shakily pointed at the massive green crate that was fully open to show a great big amount of nothing inside, though there were scrape marks on the bottom that showed something rather heavy having been dragged away, along with broken pieces of pavement just outside the lip of the container. He didn't bother checking to see if it was the stranger behind him or if he was just talking to himself as he added, "Bomb was in there. Nobody but my boss, two of my coworkers, and me. No one knew what was in it. They were the heroes. They were supposed to retrieve the audio trigger bomb contained in this thing as of 20 minutes ago." The stranger finished for the man, startling him anew by how close behind him he sounded. He flinched and recoiled as red fabric brushed his shoulder, followed by the figure sweeping past him without a look to either side. No explosives. No other containers appeared to have been searched, despite having far weaker security measures. Lock's gone too. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were coming for, and they either knew how to circumvent the locks used in advance, or they had a very specific quirk that let them get the job done without leaving any fingerprints. Quietly. Possibly both. But why, though? The dock worker asked, unable to stop his shaking, but also unable to help his curiosity. That stuff would probably kill whoever tried to set it off, right? Why would they... I doubt they wanted to set it off. The stranger muttered as his gaze seemed to turn downward. If they wanted that, they would have just lit a bomb in the yard and they used that to destroy the casing. Wouldn't spread as far as the original designer would have intended, but plenty enough trigger would get into the air and water from here to cause a lot of problems. The hell is this stuff? But what I wasn't asking you. The dock worker promptly shut his mouth again as his antagonist knelt by the entrance to the container, apparently fixated on something that he could not make sense of. This also allowed the frightened citizen to be sure of the fact that this person was not looking his way whatsoever as he reached into his pocket for his phone, intent on hitting the emergency button that every communication device came with nowadays. It would instantly alert any nearby heroes and police that there was a person in distress, and with as many heroes as there were in the area, he was confident that he will only need to stall for another 10 seconds or 10 minutes. No one is coming to help you until I'm finished here. The stranger informed the worker, causing the latter's blood to freeze in his veins. What? I don't have time to deal with stupid questions, so guess what? The cloaked figure grunted as he stood and turned to look at the now petrified dock worker, the underside of his cowl glowing with an eerie silver light. I have telepathic capabilities, and until I say otherwise, you're going to forget how to walk, talk, or move your arms. Even as he spoke, the worker's phone made a quick exit out of the man's pocket and quickly made its way into the folds of the red swordsman's cloak, where the emergency button remained fully untouched. Finished saying so, he knelt back down and reached out with a gloved hand to pick up a few broken pieces of tarmac, his eyes narrowing in suspicion as he did. As the dock worker began to make inarticulate, strangling sounds with his throat, he barked over his shoulder, "Shut up, or add forgetting how to breathe on your new list of talents!" When all that greeted him were the dulled sounds of the city and stifled grunts that might have been a grown man's attempt not to cry, he nodded to himself and raised the blackened material to his eye level, studying it intently without so much as a breath passing between his lips for nearly a full minute. When he finally did allow a breath to escape his mouth, he lightly pinched his fingers together and watched with something like satisfaction as it crumbled into smaller pieces, though not quite the consistency of dust. The thief's quirk. He nodded as he stood up, the silvery glow spreading from his eyes to the crumbling material in his hand as it all began to levitate, swirling in a neat little ring above his palm that he now turned skyward, keeping the evidence away from other potential contaminants. Who knows how many times this idiot stepped on this stuff when he was panicking after seeing this. As he had the thought, he felt his eyes slide over to the dock worker, who was shaking in his boots, his eyes bugging out in terror as he continued to fight against the fact that neither his tongue nor his arms worked as they had been less than 5 minutes ago. Standing up, he strode over to him and peered at him with vicious intensity from behind his cowl while saying, "Cargo like this, there's no way at least one person shouldn't have been keeping a night watch in the area. What'd you do?" Suddenly, the dock worker found that his tongue could move again, though as he struggled to come up with the right words, he noticed in an abject sort of way that his arms still wouldn't respond to his commands. The boss, he said it would look suspicious if we changed up the way we usually do with this stuff. He blubbered, doing everything in his power to make sure the answer he gave would keep this vindictive figure from doing whatever it was that he had done to his motor control again. I checked the dogs, all of them, last night. I went home. I came back first thing, and, well, you see. He tried again to gesture futilely with his arms, but he could only make a vague motion with his chin. Why are you treating me like some kind of suspect, huh? Even if you're not a suspect, you're at the very least complicit. The other man snorted derisively. You didn't go home last night. Your boss didn't sign off on the pinheaded idea to leave what amounts to a chemical nuclear warhead fully unattended for 6 hours. There was a brief pause before the stranger growled, "You know where I'm going with this." "I have no idea. The second the man realized he had lost control of his tongue again, he was forced to register a pair of violent impacts to his body. The first being an iron grip that fastened around his throat, and the second when his entire frame was slammed into the side of the shipping container, while a terrible voice roared inside of his mind, "What part of telepathic capabilities did you not understand?" Tyrannus smash! Wind howled and black lightning scorched the ground as Aerie zipped from side to side faster than most eyes can follow, evading the bioelectric bolts while continuing her rapid advance toward their caster. One trail of energy nearly caught her in the shoulder. But a swift slashing motion from her hand slapped the danger aside and redirected it toward a pair of verdant energy blasts, which exploded on contact. She hardly had time to notice, though. Kurai was already in front of her, his speed startling even her as he threw a jab at her stomach, faster than the lightning he had been using to keep her away until now. Instead of trying to block the blow, she spun around it and swung her elbow so that it would connect with the back of her opponent's head. Eri was grinning as she realized that at this range and their speed, Kurai would either have to take the blow or throw himself on the ground to avoid getting hit. That smile was quickly wiped away when Black Whip sprung out of his back and bound her arm in place just long enough for him to perform a reverse kick that slammed into her shoulders, sending her rolling in the dust for a fair distance. Letting out a wheezing groan, Eri craned her neck to look over her shoulder, back where Izuku was now trying to overwhelm Kurai with an onslaught of lasers that streaked into the sky, as the 10th holder of One For All used a combination of float and the raw power of the quirk to evade the barrage. It sure doesn't feel like he has much catching up to do, she thought as her back protested the abuse it had just endured. Having suffered a clean hit, she now had to count herself out for the rest of the round, as per the rules of the match that were agreed to a few minutes prior. Meanwhile, Kurai was finding it harder and harder to avoid getting hit by the power of his old quirk, and the fact that Danger Sense wasn't working on his friend was starting to get on his nerves. Seriously? He thought as he prepared yet another quirk for his next move. I thought this thing was supposed to work on anybody that has hostile intents! Midoriya isn't actually trying to hurt you, so it won't be set off. He heard the 4th user, Hikage, saying, You're actually complaining about that. Never underestimate our capacity for complaints. The 10th vestige replied in a snarky tone. Shut up, you're all distracting. Kurai growled before he sped toward the ground, away from Izuku, having finished preparing his next move. Ventress! Smash! The second he hit the ground, black smoke erupted from his body, enveloping the field in a thick cloud that obscured the participants' vision, and causing Izuku to cease his output of energy bolts as he paused to consider his next move. Unfortunately for his opponent, he thought of a solution faster than he would have liked. Basic Instinct! Izuku cried right before the fog lit up with an ominous red glow that quickly spat out a yelling Kurai who was running away from a series of frighteningly persistent scarlet energy blasts. Damn it! He shouted before using Black Whip to smack aside the closest bolts. You were supposed to get tripped up trying to use Divine Eye. When did you even... First time. Izuku cut him off as he too emerged from the smoke cloud, eyes and hair blazing red while his skin darkened as if with bad sunburn. I had the sense that I would be able to use this, and it seemed like a better option since I haven't been able to use the Divine Eye ever since we used Akudori's Divine... Dude, how are you talking that fast while fighting and essentially using a power that basically requires you not to think? Kurai demanded as he cut him off, still doing everything he could to avoid getting hit by an energy blast. You thought this ability required little to no conscious thought, but it really just requires you to let your body act on its own, separate from any conscious decisions on your part, which doesn't necessarily mean that I have to stop that. Stop that! Kurai shouted as sweat dripped down his brow. He had not planned for Izuku to be capable of using one of his more dangerous abilities so soon after awakening Energon anew, and his nerves were quickly becoming raw from the tension. As a result, his temper was growing shorter by the second. And even though this was meant to be a sparring match between the 3 One For All inheritors, he had no intention of losing. Physical decline over the last month be damned. There's still Thexan, his own vestige reminded him. Kurai thought about the suggestion for a moment while he continued to evade before he silently replied, That requires me outlasting him, and given that we're still figuring out how many chakras he's unlocked, we don't have a real way of knowing his stamina level right now. He might be able to keep this up for a few minutes instead of a few seconds like we were able to when we first used Basic Instinct. You have a better idea? No. He scowled at his other self's sense of smugness that he felt in that moment, but he also knew that if their positions had been reversed, he would have been acting the exact same way. Pushing the paradoxical thoughts aside, he increased the power of One For All from the constant 15% that he had been channeling to 40%, sending him rocketing away from Izuku with a violent slipstream the other boy had difficulty navigating safely, even with his newly awakened ability. Once he felt he had put a reasonably safe distance between them, Kurai skidded to a stop, keeping the increased level of power flowing throughout his body. This led to deep gouges being carved into the ground, but he hardly noticed as he kept a sharp eye for Izuku, who had made his way past the rushing winds and traced lightning. There was no sign of him slowing down, but Kurai knew from experience there would be no tangible hints of such a thing, short of the technique simply exhausting him beyond his ability to use it at all. With that in mind, he concentrated hard, forcing Smokescreen to let out several bursts of smoke from his body that drifted in several directions, each one roughly the size of a grown man. One of these he used to obscure his own body and disguise his next move, making sure to move carefully within it as to not give his position away. Somewhat predictably, Izuku responded to this by sending a small hailstorm of energy bursts into the smoke columns, no doubt intending to flush Kurai out of hiding by doing so. The blasts were aimed at chest and or head height, something that normally would have been a good move considering that Kurai couldn't see through the smoke any more than his opponent could. In this case, however, Izuku forgot to factor in Nana Shimura's power, which allowed the user to float miles above the landscape with ease, or less than a foot above the dirt in a small crouch that allowed all of Izuku's attack to pass him by. It was a gamble, chancing that his opponent would aim only for the higher points of his body, but Kurai felt that it was worth the risk. Whenever he had used Basic Instinct himself, he almost always went for instant takedown shots that would conserve the most energy on his part, as to allow the ability to sustain itself longer. He wouldn't waste power or time on less rewarding targets, and he thought it was reasonable to assume that Izuku's instincts would act in a similar manner, given how much of a threat he was as an opponent himself. The second that a laser burst seared the smoke he was hiding in, he let out a shout, as if in pain, and sent out a tendril of black whip along the ground to mimic the sounds of a body being thrown in the dirt. Following that, he heard Izuku skid to a stop and begin breathing harder, informing him that his opponent had reached his limit with the technique. And like that, I've got him, he thought with a grin as he prepared the next part of his plan. Are you okay, Kurai? He heard Izuku coughing as the voice drew closer. Instead of answering with words, Kurai unleashed a storm of black whips that blew the smoke away and immediately snatched up a very startled, very tired Izuku and bound him in place several feet off the ground. Following that, Kurai yanked viciously on the tendrils connecting him to his opponent, bringing the other boy hurtling toward him while he set himself in a firm, fighting horse stance. Fexen! He shouted as bio-lightning sizzled across the fist-sprouting black whips. He waited for a half-second to allow Izuku to come within range before stepping forward in a low stance that dug his feet firmly into the ground even as he threw his punch with all the power that he dared, sinking his fist into his friend's stomach. The Green Knight's bodily momentum met Kurai's arm, and Kurai's arm won. Smash! The black lightning surged and the fight was definitively over. I don't recall our agreed contract giving you leave to enact your own brand of justice. And I don't recall giving you people permission to lose the bomb I took from Humorize, yet here we are. The red-cloaked swordsman snorted as he looked down at the hole of the shipping yard from atop one of the cranes that assisted in moving the containers from ship to ship. There was silence from the other end of the phone that he was speaking into, but eventually a woman's voice inquired, "What did you learn?" "I've left all the physical evidence of what I believe to be one of the thieves' quirks with the CSIs that came to the yard," he answered. "Hopefully that'll help narrow down the list of suspects. The idiot who was supposed to be watching things didn't know anything about what happened other than the fact that it was his fault no one was here to stop them. Said it was the supervisor's fault when I questioned him." "Questioned him," the woman repeated flatly. "Is that what you call your work?" "Fine, when I interacted with him," the mystery figure snorted. "Point is, he didn't want to take the blame for his part in this. I didn't like that. This was more than a failure to take blame for you. Even you're not that petty. The guy may end up being largely responsible for a repeat of Kanto, and I hate that you're right, it wasn't entirely about that." The swordsman scowled as he added, "The guy has a nice family, loving wife, a couple of kids he gets to go home to whenever his shift ends. And for that, you castrated him. Look, if a worker doesn't know how to use sensitive equipment, you don't trust him with it." "Come again?" "The guy spent last night in the red light district." He deadpanned as if that explained everything. "Tried to actually pass the gap in surveillance off on his boss's bad managerial skills since the guy's apparently a headache for HR. Think he was planning to have him take the fall for his screw-up since it was actually somewhat plausible. I'd almost respect the effort if it didn't come from such a scumbag." Not for the first time, he thanked his training in developing his psychic abilities to the degree that allowed him to read not only a person's active thoughts, but even their buried ambitions and emotions alike. "And you felt he deserved to lose his reproductive capabilities for this?" "No, he got his junk chopped off because he has fidelity issues that might well lead to another national crisis." The swordsman snorted. After a half-second of quiet, he added a sharp bark of laughter and admitted, "All right, I did it because I despise homewreckers more than just about any other kind of criminal. We have enough problems with the public because of these lawsuits. Without you, he won't even remember me being there." The cloaked figure interrupted again without a tone of worry or apology in his voice. "You know nobody has remembered seeing me in public since the licensing exams. Whole camera system was shot to hell by whoever pulled off the heist, so I didn't even have to erase my tracks on that end. No one else was around when he submitted the report, nor did anyone come when I was working the scene. Since you intercepted the message he put out before it even hit the cops' database, all you have to do is change the initial report from robbery to assault and battery resulting in theft, as perpetrated by rather violent villains. The villain alert I sent out from his phone will corroborate that narrative. Nothing will tie you to any of this." You are a very self-assured individual, aren't you? I know you're trying your best not to say arrogant, the youth smirked. But moving on, we do have bigger concerns. Whoever stole this didn't set it off in the city like they could have as soon as they had access to it, which tells me this was not Humorized remnants out for revenge. This is someone else. And they have plans for that substance. The League, perhaps? I won't rule it out, but I also doubt it. The swordsman muttered as he turned to look out across the harbor, where the sun had just cleared the city line. Biological warfare doesn't match Shigaraki's MO, nor that of any of his known associates. Then again, we never expected him to team up with the Yakuza. We'll have Hawks continue his work on the League, his supervisor informed him. I'll send over any relevant data, any data relevant to this case from him as he reports it. You run down anyone you can think of who might have a hand in repurposing an explosive of that size. And don't let your personal feelings oversee your conduct again, understand? I will not have a repeat of today's behavior without consequences. Yes, ma'am, the youth muttered before he disconnected the call. As he pocketed the device, he added to himself in a tone that only he could hear. Sure, keep tolerating the societal rot like you and your predecessors have, President. Keep on allowing it to infect the people you're supposed to be protecting while you cover up the ugliness of humanity with all the pretty lights cast by the heroes. See where it lands you. Okay. Remind me, whose idea was it again to spend Sunday sparring and in the nurse's office? Eri complained as the three of them walked out of Recovery Girl's room. She could have easily undone their injuries herself, but doing so would also undo any physical gains they had acquired over the course of the fight itself. Admittedly, they wouldn't be a whole lot, but the foretold war against the Liberation Front looming, they would take every bit of power they could gather. Yours, Izuku and Kurai replied instantly. On his own, the gray-haired teen added, I had other stuff that I wanted to get done today, but you were determined to see how your use of One for All matched up to mine, and since our friend here is insatiably curious about how his progress with Energon is coming along, it only makes sense that All Might ends up supervising a three-way brawl. Still seems a little exaggerated for him to hide in the observatory while we test our powers, Izuku murmured to no one in particular. Then again, I suppose there's always a chance that one of us gets carried away in the heat of the moment. Huh, Eri muttered. Next time that I have the brilliant idea of fighting you two at the same time, please do me the favor of having gravity float me into orbit, because that honestly sounds less stressful than what I just went through. What are you complaining for? Kurai snorted while looking mildly offended at Eri. You two pretty much double-teamed me at the start of the fight, not to mention you're going back to the lounge after this. Wait, you're not coming? Izuku inquired. Nah, I asked Ojiro to help me revisit my hand-to-hand basics, so I'm heading over to Gym Gamma to meet him for some practice. His friend answered with a shake of his head. He's teaching me some Shaolin to help me get better at close combat, since One for All is more suited for reactive fighting styles at a lower power output. Aren't you already a black belt in karate? Eri asked curiously. I think Mina said something about that while you were away. I am, but getting that rank does not put me above learning new stuff, nor should it put somebody under the impression that I know everything about that brand of martial arts. Kurai replied with a rueful grin as he scratched the back of his neck. Anyone who thinks they know everything about anything shows how little they really do know. But why change your fighting style now? Feels like you might be setting yourself up to trip over your own feet. Shaolin relies more on evasion and retaliation than Shorin-Ryu's pattern of planting yourself and attacking before someone can even get up in your business, the white-haired boy explained as they turned up the path that led away from the main campus building. And I'm not throwing away everything that I've learned up to now. Odds are that for now my training will kick in and I'll default to Shorin-Ryu anyway. I just know that Shaolin is more of a style that suits a quirk like One for All, and I'd rather start adjusting my style as close to me using a new quirk as possible. You could still do distance attack with wind pressure in your bio-lightning, Izuku reminded him, to which his friend nodded in concession. Like I said, I'm not making a full transition away from what I've learned, like how you're not abandoning everything that you learned from All Might up to now, Kurai said in his turn. And it's not like I can expect to be a kung fu master in a few weeks either, but there are things that I can and therefore should learn in order to better myself and this quirk. Okay, but when was the last time you took a break? Eri asked him suspiciously. I don't think I've seen you sit down outside of class or mealtime since we got back from dealing with Humor Eyes. Break? What's that? Her predecessor snorted with a hint of derision. When he received dubious looks from the others, he made a face and muttered, Okay, I'm not about to take this from a guy who cleaned an entire beach on his own in less than a year, nor will I stand from it from a girl who's been cramming an entire life's worth of education into the last 3 months, on top of being put through the academic ringer by Eraserhead. As he allowed a flat look to take over his features, Eri and Izuku were forced to look at one another with a sheepish air, followed by him admitting, Okay, maybe we don't have any room to talk. What? We have all the room to talk! Eri protested. Rounding back on Kurai, she then jabbed a finger at his shoulder. She added, Under that context, if we're saying you need a break, you really must need one. Fat chance, Kurai snorted. Before either of them could make another protest, his body was decorated with black lightning that allowed him to shoot into the air in the direction of the aforementioned gym. Once the gusts of wind and electrical vibrations in the air had settled, Izuku glanced at Eri, who was wearing a passive face, and said, "Maybe we should go get Mina to talk him down?" "Are you crazy?" the girl asked incredulously as she looked at her peer as though he'd suddenly grown a second head. "She'll probably hold us accountable for him not taking a few minutes off before going to train with Ojiro when she hears that we dragged him into our little one-for-all brawl. I'm not interested in death by acid, thanks." So saying, the pair stopped in the path, having realized that they were more or less on their way to having to explain themselves to the pink girl simply by appearing in their dorm without Kurai in tow. After an awkward moment had passed, Izuku decided to ask, "What if we just train hard enough to completely wipe ourselves out so that any prank or punishment she gives us would seem like cruel and unusual retribution? It's probably our only chance." The sound of a phone trilling out across the room and the stark silence that had consumed the lab of its owner for the last few hours might have been enough to startle most people to at least the degree of looking up from what they were doing, but not so for a man dressed in an immaculate white trench coat. After all, his current task did not permit for even the slightest moment of deviation and concentration, and so to him, all that existed outside of the tools in his hands and the construct on the ground before him may as well have been happening on another planet entirely. It wasn't until the phone had rung 5 or 6 times that there was a sharp hissing sound that came from the mechanism, which caused the man to tense up slightly as if in preparation to receive pain. However, the only sound that continued from there on was that of the phone's ringing, and a smile was brought to the delicate features of the man in the white coat. "Well, it seems as though we get to live another day, Nero, my dear," he called out over his shoulder in a merry tone. Green eyes flashed with wicked delight as their owner set aside the tools and turned toward the phone, his hand already extended outward, so that the moment he was done standing up completely, the line had been opened and was ready for him to speak into it. "Yotsubashi, how have you been?" he asked through a smile flawless enough to put a dentist out of a job. "The leader of the Meta Liberation Army himself? This is a fun Sunday." "I have been well, thank you. I have a proposition concerning the package I suspect you recently acquired. My, word travels fast. So, friend, what can Roman Torchwick offer you this fine evening?" The afternoon at Class 1A's dorm was a pleasant affair, with it being Blake, Shoji, and Sero's turn for meal prep. This resulted in a small variety of sushi dishes being produced for the class by mealtime, something that each of them took well to. "Anyone else feel like whenever Belladonna cooks, it involves fish somehow?" Kaminari questioned while he and Kirishima moved to set the tables with Jiro and Hagakure. "It's better than when Kurai always incorporating ramen into his food," Mina commented with a grin as she walked by, dressed in one of the boys' confiscated dark side hoodies, his apparent punishment for not taking a day to rest. "I make ramen 3 times, and I never hear the end of it," said boy complained from where he was currently engaged in a chess match with Yaoyorozu, and not doing well from the looks of it. Jiro was pretty sure that Mina had told him he could have his sweater back if he sat down long enough to play a board game, which would explain his impatience if that were the case. "Believe it or not, Blake eats a lot less fish than she used to," Ruby piped up as she got off the couch from where she had just finished defeating a very confused-looking Ida at a round of Smash Bros. As the boy continued to look blankly at the controller in his hands, she went on to say, "I actually thought her quirk had some kind of cat factor when we were first getting to know each other. She ate it so much. That and she sees really well in the dark. There was also that time I got her to chase a laser pointer." Yang snickered, causing their friend to turn red from embarrassment. "What else was I supposed to do?" she protested. "You kept flicking it on and off all over my computer until I got up, then you made it zigzag all over the floor until I went after it. And my sight in the dark is just the result of a lot of practice." "I'm just saying, you spent a lot of time chasing that light instead of trying to figure out where it was coming from." Her blonde friend giggled with her sister. "Not a cat," Blake muttered as she set the finished food on the kitchen counter. She looked like she was about to say more, but then there was a surprised exclamation from Yaoyorozu following Kurai's smug-sounding pronunciation of the word checkmate. "How?" she asked as she moved her head to look at the board from either side, as if doing so might reveal her prior errors that had indeed placed her in an untenable position on the simulated field of battle. "How could I have not noticed?" "2 reasons," Kurai grinned, clearly enjoying his victory over their class's resident book expert. "1, I've had to play against Akururi in this game I don't know how many times during the last few years. The only way I ever won against him, which obviously wasn't very often, was by playing dumb while doing my best to maneuver his pieces the way that I needed them to go. Of course, that really only works against him because I grew to understand his playstyle, but the idea is basically the same here. 2nd, the 6th loved playing chess, and turns out that he's surprisingly good at it. I may have started the game, but about 5 moves into it, you were pretty much playing him with my face." Kurai paused with a small frown before he added, "That sounded a lot less weird in my head. I'm sorry." "Well, I suppose I can take some comfort in knowing that I still surpass you in some ways, then," the class's vice rep said with a slight chuckle. "For a moment, I was worried that you might have eclipsed my own ability to strategize." "Isn't that cheating, using your quirk to win?" Ojiro asked as the pair began to reset the board for later use. "It's not using my quirk," Kurai protested. "I don't have something like solar intelligence, and besides, it's not like she couldn't have asked one of you guys for help if you want to toss our win under the label tag team." No offense to any of us here, but if Yamamoto can't beat you at chess, what makes you think that any of us are going to be able to help her?" Hagakure asked as she walked by them. "I'm honestly stuck at the part where he has a spirit from beyond the nether playing a board game vicariously through him," Tokuyami commented. "Truly a mad banquet of darkness his mind must be." Kurai shrugged at that. "It's really not so bad," he told them. "For the most part, they just keep quiet or talk to each other in a way that I don't hear it. If I tell them to leave me alone for a while, they usually listen, so it's not like I'm being involuntarily haunted by angry ghosts out for revenge. Not against you, anyway," Weiss reminded him. Kurai paused mid-rise, nodded, then finished getting up as he said, "Fair point. I'm just saying that as I'm not the target of their revenge plot, and I've agreed to get back on track, we don't have a conflict of interests." "Question," Ruby said as she approached the tables, which were beginning to fill up with hungry students. "Shoot. Your vestige took over your body when Humorize attacked Kanto, right?" she inquired. "Can any of them do that to you, or does it only work because it was technically you who did it?" Kurai's face went blank for a moment before he answered, "I'm pretty sure the 10th is the only one who could take full control away from me against my will, but none of us are exactly willing to put that to the test either. The past vestiges are more than content to lend their aid from within the quirk and feel no need to defeat All for One on their own, which is a good thing because 10 people trying to control one vessel in different ways sounds like a recipe for disaster." "So, none of them have any final wishes that they couldn't do before they died?" Kaminari asked. Could you do stuff for them that they couldn't get around to?" Again, Kurai's face went blank, which the others were starting to realize was him listening to the other vestiges before his face turned into a slight deadpan as he answered, "Kill All for One and Shigaraki." Truth be told, he wished that Eri were here to take some of these questions in her turn, but she was working with Izuku and Ochako on some informatics homework that she had been struggling through. By this point, he assumed that they were going to be late for dinner, which meant that he was going to have to be the one to slake everyone's curiosity about their quirk. "They sound like a good crowd to run with." Bakugo grinned as they walked into the room.
"It sounds kind of sad to me,"
Asui commented as she crouched in her seat.
"Their whole lives, they just wanted to save people and defeat the one causing so much pain, only to end up dying at his hands over and over again. Now that's all they can think about?"
There was a somewhat awkward stretch of silence before Kurai cleared his throat and said, "They don't think about it that way, Sue. To them, their lives are already over and they accomplished everything they were meant to do. Now that pieces of their souls continue to exist in this state, between life and death, they have no more personal aspirations, only the common goal of saving everyone within their reach and defeating All for One for the good of all. As long as those goals remain a possibility for them, they're content." With that, he sat down in his place at the table and reached out for the first dish that caught his eye. Seeing that he was trying to move things along without being too forceful with it, Mina looked at his choice of food and groaned out, "Man, why are you getting the spider rolls? The avocado and those are nasty." "Because I actually want to eat all of my dinner, and I know if I get any of the rainbow rolls, you're just going to steal them off my plate," he replied with a snarky grin. "Hands to yourself, Ashido." "Yeah, well, joke's on you," she shot back before one of her hands snatched one of the chosen pieces off his plate while the others started passing the food around. "Even if it's not my favorite, I can still..." To her surprise, Kurai had preempted her by snatching up another roll and sticking it in her mouth while she was still talking, which led to her being taken aback by the sudden burst of, in her opinion, nasty flavors overwhelming her taste buds. Naturally, she spit it out on her plate, causing several of their friends to look askance at them while Kurai wore a very "I told you not to try it" face that Mina found both endearing and infuriating simultaneously. Of course, from the other end of the table, Ida then took that moment to shout, "That is very wasteful, Kurai Ashido! One of you had better eat that!" "Dude, there's a such thing as being wasteful. What you're saying is just weird," Sarah responded with a reddened face that was shared by a few of the other guys and most of the girls. As Ida went to argue back, Kurai leaned back in his seat with a big grin, picked up one of the fresh rolls with his eating implements, and popped it in his mouth with the thought, "This is more like it." Later that evening, when it was nearly time for the early sleepers to turn in for bed, Todoroki surprised Kurai by coming up to him with a rather bizarre request. "You want me to let my vestige have control of my body for a minute?" he repeated, not sure that he had heard the other boy correctly. "If it's possible," The heterochromic boy nodded. If it's not, or you're uncomfortable with it, I understand. But there's something I wanted to say to him. I mean, Kurai scratched the back of his head before answering, I think it should be fine, but you know whatever you say to me, we both hear it. I guessed as much, but even so. Todoroki replied, his gaze as passive as ever. If the answer is no, I understand. I'll just be going up then. No, wait. Kurai said as he held up his hand to make a negative gesture. Just give me a minute. By now, most of the other students had caught on to what was going on, which had inevitably led to them being drawn nearer by their curiosity, but he did his best to ignore the fact as he closed his eyes. For a few seconds, it seemed like Kurai was just standing there, his eyes closed in the middle of the lounge room without a care. But then he opened them and locked gazes with Todoroki in a silent stare. There was no change in the way that Kurai was standing, nor did it even seem like his quirk was active. The lines in his face did not become aggressive, and his breathing remained paced and even. From the outside, nothing about Kurai should have been alarming to an onlooker. Even so, in that instant, the atmosphere in the room changed to one of underlying tension as they realized they were no longer in the presence of their classmate, but that of a hardened entity that had persisted beyond the decay of his flesh and back into a time where he could wreak vengeance upon his enemies. It was not a presence meant to be felt, yet it remained all the same. The shape of his eyes had not changed, but something about them seemed far harder than any show of determination that Kurai had ever given them. Hello, Todoroki, he said quietly. Again, nothing about the voice itself was different, but the way that it registered with his friends still hit different enough that it set many of them on edge to the point of backing up a half pace. Shoto was not one of those people. Instead, he maintained his own cool gaze and said, It's been a long time, hasn't it? The 10th nodded once in agreement before he answered, A decade, give or take. To what do I owe the pleasure? You're the first person other than Eri in this time who's wanted to talk to me. I wanted to thank you. Todoroki replied, surprising everyone around him, none more than the shade in front of him. Thank me, he snorted, for driving your Kurai to the brink of insanity? For putting him in the line of fire for the initial humorized attack and nearly taking him away from all of you for a second time? For doing what it took to save the world countless times, Todoroki answered calmly. For resisting Shigaraki for so long, and choosing Eri as your heir, you have all of our thanks. But from me, you have my deepest thanks for saving my mother and Kanto. He bowed to the other boy, who watched him with unblinking eyes as he did. Thank you for doing everything you could to save the people of this time as soon as you could, Ida said, drawing his steady gaze toward the taller boy, who was now also bowing to him. Thank you for showing all of us that even if we perish as heroes, it's not the end of what we can do, Yajirozu added as she bowed from her own waist. Thank you for saving Mr. Aizawa from the League at the USJ, Asui croaked as she lowered her own head. One by one, each of the students in the room lowered their heads in Kurai's direction as they bespoke their individual thanks for his many efforts. Thank you for coming to find those of us who were on the run in the dark the night the summer camp attack, said Shoji. Thank you for showing us what it means to honor the people who have gone before us, Kaminari added. My deepest gratitude for saving my soul from the shadows of the forest, Tokiyami intoned in an almost reverential voice. By now, the hard light of the 10th's eyes were beginning to soften, and his friends weren't done. Thank you for making us feel welcome among all your friends, even though we're outsiders, Yang said while Ruby nodded rapidly as she added a bow of her own. Thanks for being a hero to look up to, the younger sister murmured. Thank you for trusting all of us the way that you did, Ojiro told him. Thanks for living out the truth that it takes more than our quirks to make a great hero. Thank you for always looking at us as equals, with our own merits that sometimes even we forget. Thanks for showing us what it looks like to be a real man, right up to the end. Kirishima grinned before lowering his head. My thanks for never thinking yourself so above us that you refused to compete, Weiss acknowledged with a regal bow of her own. Thank you for always giving it your all when we needed you, no matter how much you didn't want to sometimes, Jiro told him. It always helped to know that you, who seemed so far above me, had their own doubts and insecurities like I do and kept moving onward because of it. Thank you for being one of us, Koda said softly. Thanks for being our friend, man, Sarah grinned. A guy like you could have easily turned out to be an asshole, but you were always the kind of hero that any kid would be lucky to meet. Merci, mon frère, Aoyama added with a sweeping bow. Your illuminance is truly unsurpassed from now until the passing of the darkest of times. Thanks for saving us on Nabu, Bakugo muttered. He wasn't bowing when he spoke, but no one was going to comment on the fact. I'll always be grateful to you for caring enough about all of us to fight even your own self, Blake told him. Thank you for doing whatever it took to make sure that Kurai becomes the hero we know you two can be. Thank you for being our hero, even beyond the end, Ochako murmured. Thank you for saving my dream, Izuku said as he bowed to the hero of the times never to come. Thank you for reviving the dream that I thought died with my friends. Eri smiled before she sank to her knees and gave him the lowest bow of all. Thank you for rescuing me, both as a child and a hero ready to despair. There was the briefest moment of silence before the 10th felt a familiar pair of warm arms encircle from behind. As Mina said, thank you for being strong and brave enough to stand your ground to the end, Kurai. There was another small stretch of silence as Class 1A began to lift their heads, and when they did, they were all surprised to see the tears that were falling from Kurai's eyes. Everyone, the 10th whispered, barely audible to the lot of them. Your gratitude. He shook his head slightly before telling them, I should be the one to thank each of you. After the betrayal from my parents, Akuru and I couldn't be there for each other, but all of you. His voice faltered, and then he felt Mina hug him a little harder, and he found he had the strength to say what he needed to. All Might told us that reaching out and interfering where we don't technically have to is the essence of being a hero. I remember how, not so long ago for you, but for me what seems like a lifetime, you all were here, ready to accept the burdens that I laid down on you, before I even asked. Thank you, and... The 10th drew in a deep breath before he shut his eyes and returned the bow, Mina's arms falling away from him as he murmured, Please look out for Kurai in the coming war. Neither he or I are very good at it. We promise, Izuku answered as he urged his friend to stand up straight. This time, we're all moving into the future together. No one gets left behind. The 10th met his predecessor's gaze evenly before he nodded and said, Thank you, old friend, for this and for entrusting me with your dream on Nabu. Then his eyes softened and closed again, and the tension in the air that had continued to persist finally melted away. This didn't stop Izuku from saying to the two heroes, It couldn't have gone to anyone more worthy. Glowing eyes sat in the dark at the behest of their owner, each one processing untold quantities of data that flashed across the screens in silence before their unblinking gaze. There had been hours, days, even weeks that had passed in this exact fashion as the owner of those eyes studied everything the computer terminals had brought to their attention. Media articles, videos, both raw and edited, opinionated blogs, timid whispers from those who thought their identities obscured by firewalls on any number of forums. Everyone had a voice that was so much more telling than they thought it was when somebody had the ability to strip away the supposed anonymity that was granted by the internet. Had they known what the invader was planning to do with that information? Some might have even called for the ablution of the internet in its entirety, had they known what was to come. All this data would be next to useless beyond exacting petty revenge for the average person, even if they somehow managed to get their hands on it. The reader mused, even as they continued their unblinking violation of countless privacy laws. In my hands, a true revolution. Several of the monitors stopped whirring with the information and now displayed only a handful of still images. Each one contained an image and a summary of the necessary compiled information relating to the subjects displayed. These are the ones who must break, the reader murmured quietly as they stared at each stilled monitor in its turn, their gaze finally settling on a pair in particular. First was the Guardian hero. In some ways the easiest to shatter. But the timing will be crucial, they thought slowly. Too soon, nothing will truly change. Too late, and perhaps too much would become different. The next image showed the famed teenager's younger brother bent double over some mechanical construct whose design to most people would never be able to guess at, but to the current onlooker appeared almost juvenile in design. He will be far more difficult to subdue, but all the more crucial because of it, the onlooker thought with an unmatched certainty. If the mind is handicapped, the body is soon to follow, as you well know. Many a villain might have smiled at the plan that had been taking shape in this person's mind. But this one was beyond such emotional constraints. Wants and desires would not participate in what was to come. Only what was necessary would be allowed to play out on their end in this game of heroes versus villains. You've both faced a great deal, especially for children, the figure thought as they turned their head and began to compile a new set of data on a different screen across the room. You've endured loss at the hands of the Yakuza, humiliation from the public for your family's betrayals, mutilation, disfiguration, insanity, even death due to the actions of villains. None of it compares to what I'm going to do to you two.
Can't bury the truth, the past is far from dead. The chances we lose when we choose never to forget. When choice is made, that puts the pain, the taste of blood was the beginning of the end. Beginning of the end.
All right. So this is not the first time I've shown this the character that we just wrapped up with. I did a brief for a reminder. There was a brief moment with this character with this villain when Kurai made his return in Kanto. Like I don't know if anybody remembers, but he, she, whatever they are, they were like looking at video feeds and stuff, and they were kind of eyeballing everything, and they were like, all right, I can work with this.
Yeah.
This is gonna be an interesting villain.
It's hard for me because I know, and so I don't want to bring up too many comparisons at this point in time because I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, gotcha.
But I'm emotionally dead to this part. I can't even address this.
Oh man.
That's yeah.
What was I gonna say? But back earlier in the chapter, we have let's see, we have Kurai. So we kind of have an image of Kurai settling back into his life at UA. The dude's super busy.
Oh yeah.
Like he's catching up on schoolwork. He's
Oh my
trying to get
gosh.
his body
and
back in
like,
shape.
Bro, you need to take a chill pill. He's like, no time for that.
Like,
You got no time for chill pills.
No time for like the opening scene is like the closest thing to a break that he's taking. He's like, all right, I'm gonna sit. I'm gonna have lunch with my friends for an hour, and then I'm gonna get back to it.
Okay, Superman.
I love that episode of Superman where he gets the super hearing, and Jimmy comes back. He's like, "Have you been sleeping, man?"
Oh, my Adventures of Superman.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. He's like, "Have you been sleeping, man?" Not for days. Not for a few days.
Jimmy, people.
I can hear everything. Jimmy. They have problems. That's such a great
If you
show.
guys haven't seen My Adventures with Superman,
This is such a good show.
Phenomenal. Anyway, sorry. Back
so we
to
got
the
like,
story.
and it's kind of like, it was fun getting to write Kurai kind of settling back into his normal, like not normal routine yet, but more his like old headspace. So like, even though he's got this increased workload, he's more like himself. He's just more like himself at school, and
Which
he's having a
is
good
nice.
time. And he's like,
And I'm sure everyone around him appreciates that
oh yeah,
too,
I'm sure.
but
Well, like,
it's
and
nice
you
to
can
have
see,
him back.
well, you can see it in the conversations that he's surrounded by. Like, people are laughing and smiling and kind of teasing each other a lot more regularly than they have been for a long time at this point. So it was really nice to be able to like do that, and it's because like, even though we've been able to do that, like in the moments leading up to the fight with Humorize, you know, it's been very isolated. Like, it's just with him, and like it's almost always with him and Mina and maybe one or two other people. But now we see him branching out a little bit more. And just having fun with his friends in general.
Yeah, then we kind of shift over to the Shadow character,
Oh yes! Oh,
which, as many know, this is
so nice to be able to write for this character again.
as the old readers.
Old
will,
readers,
of course, recognize this character.
I'm curious to see, because I know there's people in this who have not read the Red Swordsman stuff. And I'm interested to see what their take on this
think about
psychopath
this character.
is.
It's like,
Because everybody else is gonna be like, oh yeah, that's him. That's Mataris being Mataris. And everybody else is gonna be like, everybody else is gonna be like, what is this guy?
Hawks and Lady Nagant on
Went
steroids on like yeah.
It's like Lady Nagant and Hawks took crystal meth on crystal meth.
Yeah. Well, it's not that awful.
No.
He's just intense.
Yeah, that's a word for it.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see what they think, and
Yeah. What did you think of me having Kurai do some training with Ojiro?
I think I fell asleep for that part.
You fell asleep for that part.
Yeah, sorry.
So like, brief recap, he had a sparring match with Deku and with Eri, because they kind of wanted to see how they measured up to each other. He won, but it was a very close thing because Deku pulled out some moves, and he was like, wait, he was... Because, like, it's interesting because in fighting Deku, he was just kind of like if he said it out loud, he would realize how dumb it sounded. But he was kind of expecting Deku to unlock the chakras in the same order that he did.
Yeah.
Deku went straight with Basic Instinct, not Divine Eye.
Yeah, because he's
So
different person.
Kurai was like, "Holy crap!" He straight up almost lost because he didn't account for that.
Yeah.
And he kind of panicked there for a minute. Like he still pulled the win, but he was just like he was panicking there for a minute. He's like, "This doesn't make any sense. How?" And that was again, like, it's really fun getting to write Kurai learning stuff again.
Yeah.
Because like for a long time now, he's been this very like he was even when he was learning stuff, he was very comfortable in what he had already learned.
Yeah.
So now he's kind of like not back to square one, but he's having to scramble a little bit more when it comes to learning stuff.
Oh yeah.
So after that, he goes to he's like, I'm gonna go train with Ojiro. They're like, why? You already have like. So to reiterate, he has a third Dan in karate.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember.
He had covered this way back. I can't even remember what chapter this would have been. I just remember that's a part of his bio. But now he's asking Ojiro to help him review his martial arts stuff, and everybody else, like, understandably, is kind of like,
I was like, come on, man, you're so good at fighting. He's like, no, there's always something more to learn.
There's also well, it wasn't like kind of derision from them. They're just like surprised. They're like, wait, why would you change up what already works so well for you? He's like, well, my quirk kind of changed.
Yeah.
He's like, I got it. He's like, I have to adapt to that. So like we still have like. So we have this forward thinking coming in, and you can and again, I love drawing up these little bits where even if you don't even if the characters in the story don't say it, you see how him and Akudori are brothers.
Yeah.
Because growing up with Akudori, he'd have to learn some level of foresight. He would have to learn how to think ahead, and Gang Orca, his favorite hero, is always saying you must always be planning your next move.
Yep. That's
like one of his catchphrases. So he's trying to take that advice to heart because. The last time he asked Gang Orca to take him on, Gang Orca said no because you're not applying the lessons that I taught you.
Yep.
And he knows that he did a big oopsie on that with Nabu, so we kind of like not in an overt sense, but if you're paying attention, it's like these are the things that are driving his actions in this sense.
That makes sense.
Because like I thought about kind of having a moment of his reflection of like why he's pushing himself so hard, but I'm just like, nah.
Yeah, it's kind of self-explanatory.
It is self-explanatory, and like these, like you can find the driving forces if you look hard enough, or you can listen to this podcast and I tell it to you. But yeah, it's been very fun getting to humanize Kurai again. What was I gonna say? The bit where Deku and Eri are just kind of looking at each other like, wait a minute. How do we explain this to Mina?
Yeah.
And then they're just kind of like, let's go beat each other up so bad that she's just not even going to want to bother with us. Which it's an exaggeration, but they're just kind of like, we're gonna play it safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna do this number. What was I gonna say? So we cut back to Shadow real quick. So that IDEO trigger bomb that he captured has been lost.
Yep. He ticked.
Yep. He mad. I love again, I try not to toot my own horn when it comes to writing stuff. But I really, really love that bit of byplay.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're like, we didn't give you permission to do this. He's like, I didn't give you permission to lose the bomb that I captured for you, but here we are.
Well, I mean, you're also comfortable writing this character because you've been writing him for years.
Oh my goodness, but I haven't written him in a while.
Yeah.
And it's like it's been so fun, and like almost comfortable. Like no, I'm gonna say it's been comfortable stepping back into those shoes. But it's really fun getting to apply him to a new world and a new set of rules in a sense.
Because I know you've been thinking about it for quite a while.
Well, yeah, like honestly, like when I first had him come on, I was just gonna have him as a one and done in the licensing exam. But then I started getting ideas for the arc that's coming up and for the movie. I was like, no, this. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I was like, I could have given what I had. So what I have in mind for his character going forward, I could have given it to someone else.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I've already established this character in this canon.
Why not?
And like, given his disposition, and it's kind of a fun Easter egg for people who know.
Yeah.
I was like, why not?
Well, I think when I first when you first told me you were gonna include him,
Mhm.
I had reservations. Cause
You thought I would like make him too much of the main character?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just like, oh, don't let him take over. But
No.
now that I've seen more of like the grand scheme of things, I can get behind it.
Yeah, like he's by no means gonna become a main character. I would hesitate to even call him a supporting character.
Yeah, he's just
He's
factor.
he's not a plot device, but he's definitely a tool that I'm gonna be making use of to get some more stuff. He's gonna help me raise the stakes.
Yeah.
His narrative is helping me to raise the stakes for what's to come.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, because like now we've got this going on in the back. Like we've got this going on in the background. It's like, okay, we already knew that the Paranormal Liberation Front Army thing was going to be happening, that war was going to happen.
Yes.
But now we've got an IDEO trigger bomb out there, and someone's got their hand. Someone with ill intention has got their hands on it. And he's got to go find. He's got to go find it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. What was I gonna? Let's see. What was I gonna say? Actually, no. That we get to that now.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Roman
No, you're right.
Torchwick.
You're right. Sorry, I lost track of stuff for there for a second. Yeah, we got good old Roman Torchwick happening in there.
Frickin'
Yeah. I thought about including him when the League was first being introduced because they had that one weapons dealer, and I kind of thought about bringing him in as kind of like a rival, like to like kind of have a tertiary conflict happening in the background between the underground syndicates. Then I got a way better idea for what to do with Roman and Neo.
I don't know why every time I see that character, I just think of Panic at the Disco. Like he looks like he would be a part of that band.
He really does.
Honestly,
You're not wrong.
I can just see someone putting together a music video for Panic at the Disco, like their old stuff.
So in the Ruby Chibi show, him and some of the other villains like actually put together a band at some point.
No.
I can't remember if he was on vocals or because I think Neo was on drums.
Oh my gosh.
I want to say that he was going to be on vocals.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. It was this really ridiculous thing, and I was just I was laughing
That
the whole
is so
time.
cringy. Like everything Ruby is so cringy.
It was no. This was just funny.
Oh no.
This is just because like it came out after he had been killed in the show.
Oh jeez.
So he like when he first appears in the Chibi show, he's just like, "You thought you could move off into a comedic spin-off without me? Guess again."
Man.
So now they just have him like as the cartoon, like they basically have him as like as effective as a Scooby-Doo villain.
Yeah, I love it.
It's so funny.
I love it.
But yeah, he's not going to be as comedic as I mean, maybe he'll be as comedic as a Scooby-Doo villain, but he's going to be way more threatening.
Oh man.
Like I came up with an idea for him, and it was literally one of those moments where I was just like, this is way too good not to use. I was like, nope, I will. I'm like, this, it wasn't even, I'm gonna make the story work around this because I like the idea so much. It's because of the way that the story is going that I was like, nah, this works great.
Nice.
So yeah, in case you can't tell, I'm very excited to be bringing that,
Not
that guy
I
in.
couldn't tell at all.
Let's see.
No, he's not a bad villain.
No, he's very interesting. He's like basically right before he dies, he's like, you'll keep on trying to save people, and I'm gonna do what I do best. I lie, steal, kill, cheat, whatever I have to do to get ahead in life because I'm very good at it. And then he gets launched. Like, and then like the commentary for that was actually interesting because the creators kind of explained that like, so the Grimm are the Grimm in the world of Remnant are like the embodiments of like all negativity.
Yeah.
So because he was such a negative person,
just consumed him. Literally.
It literally was it's like it wasn't even metaphorically. It literally consumed him.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. I'm like, dark. What'd you think of the bit with Kurai playing chess with Yaoyorozu?
I was sleeping for that part.
You were sleeping for that part.
Sorry.
Really, you were awake like a couple seconds before that because we had like Ruby trying to teach Ida how to play Smash Brothers,
That was
and he's
funny.
just
I
kind of
remember that.
sitting there staring at the controller, like not understanding how
That
anything
was
works.
funny. That was funny. That,
Yeah,
I could see that happening.
Okay, yeah. Well, in the background, Kurai was playing chess with Yairozu, and he ended up winning. He ended up winning, like basically out of nowhere. He ended up winning. They're like, "How did that happen?" And he's like, "Well, basically." He's like, well, the sixth user of One for All really liked playing chess, so he was just kind of telling me what to do.
I remember that. Sorry.
And they're all like, huh, this guy literally has ghosts haunting him.
Yeah, I remember that part.
And Mina's just like, wait, your own ghost is haunting you. That's hilarious. He's like, no. Then of course, so the title of the chapter is Two Heroes.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted it to, like, leading into it, I kind of wanted people to think, like, oh, maybe this is about Kurai and Deku, or maybe this is about Kurai and the shadow person, like, what kind of hero, like, is this guy even a hero?
But this is where we actually get into the meat of the story, of the chapter.
The chapter, this is where the second, like, the two heroes are Kurai and Kurai.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a moment where the vestige of Kurai is appreciated. Because the dude literally did so much.
Yeah. I have to say, the first time you read it to me, I cried my eyes out.
Yeah.
Like, I remember sobbing at this part.
Like,
At this point, I'm emotionally dead. But I remember when you first read it to me, I was like, you're making me cry.
because, like, he never expected to get thanks.
Oh, yeah.
It was, like, and he's not even bitter about that. Like, it's from his perspective, he died. And, now that part of him lives inside of One for All. The timeline has a new chance. So it's this Kurai's turn to take up the helm.
Yeah.
And
He accepts that.
yeah, he accepts that. He wasn't seeking anything out of it. But I really like that. I couldn't decide if it was going to be Todoroki or Ida who kind of led this up. But I feel like Todoroki had more to thank the vestige of Kurai for.
Surprisingly, despite the level of trauma, Todoroki is less emotionally constipated than Ida.
Yeah.
Like, surprisingly, he actually is better at, like, cutting to the chase and being like, I didn't do this.
Yep.
You know?
But yeah, it was because, like, I had him kind of touch on the subject when they were flying back to Japan. Excuse me. When their group was flying back to Japan. Because Kurai's vestige was the one. I clearly distinguished that Kurai's vestige was the one who saved his mother. And Todoroki wanted to thank his friend for that. It's interesting to think about because, like, it's not just that it's a different Kurai. This Kurai still shares most of the memories that they have with their Kurai.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, they start by thanking him for stuff that the vestige has done. But then they kind of they also move into stuff that's like, no, both of them did this. Like, they both saved Mr. Aizawa at the USJ. They both went back in to save Shoji and Tokoyami. They both saved everyone on Nabu. They both made friends with all these people. Like, after a certain point, there was a deviation.
Yeah.
But nobody ever thanked the vestige Kurai for that. So I really wanted there to be a moment where he got his reward, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, that one was right in the feels for sure.
Yeah, and I really, really liked the moment that was the most difficult to write in this whole chapter was how does Mina treat him? How do I put this? Like, they're both Kurai.
Yeah, it's not her Kurai, but
It's not her Kurai, but it's still
Kurai.
it's still like, but technically it is still her Kurai.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's a really the two Kurais aren't going to be switching back and forth. The vestige knows that he needs to let this Kurai live his life.
Yeah.
That's just how that has to go, and he's not even bitter about it. But to just have that moment where the person he loved more than anything is, like, just able to give him a hug and thank him.
Oh my gosh, yeah, my heart.
Thank him for doing what he did, for doing the thing that he felt caused doom in the first place, and have it appreciated as the act of a hero that he wanted to be. Like, I think he needed that.
Yeah.
And, like, I think it needed to happen before the arc that's coming. So yeah, it was I hope it didn't come across as too drawn out, but there was a lot that his friends needed to say to him.
That being said,
we closed off with that scene.
mm-hmm.
And oh man, like I'm excited for this villain.
Yeah.
Like yeah, I can't go too much into it. But
yeah, again, I don't want to give too much away about this one
like,
because I still get emotional about this one.
Yeah.
And I get angry about this one.
This villain does something that Becca threw a Rubik's Cube in my head for.
Yeah, when he first read it to me.
Y'all remember like a year and a half ago when Becca threw a Rubik's Cube at me? This is the villain I was planning out.
You guys are getting there finally. You'll be there eventually.
Like, oh man. I'm just like
the payoff's great. It just still hurts. One of the biggest
and so y'all what tells me that this is gonna go over great for me is that Becca tends to be more in line with your guys' way of thinking. Like when I brought Kurai back, she like initially she was with you guys initially. She was like, I don't know about this, and to some degree she still is. So to have her reaction to what is coming the way that she did kind of get like I think it gives me an insight into what you guys are gonna think of it.
Yeah, y'all please don't murder my husband. No, I think you guys will appreciate what he does.
Yeah, it's good. Like it's a good narratively it is a good idea.
I can't deny that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
Cannot deny
All right.
that.
Cool. She didn't agree. Okay. So she can't deny that. Okay. So maybe it'll be the best of both worlds. Maybe it'll be like
it still hurts.
I mean, I feel like good literature should hurt you to some degree.
Yeah.
Like, not in the sense that you're damaged from it, but, you know, you want to experience, like, a good story is the one that can take you through the entire spectrum of emotions.
I'm just going to do my best to keep my mouth shut anytime anything relating this character comes up, because I don't think we're going to see this character. I don't think we're going to see this character again for, like, we'll see, like, when you go back in hindsight, you'll kind of see what they're doing behind the scenes a little bit. But, yeah, you're not going to see them directly again for a little bit. Fun facts, they've actually already made some stuff happen. Oh, yeah.
So, on that note, thank you guys so much for sticking through with us this long.
Yeah.
That concludes Your Hero Academia Unleashed. Starting next time, we will be moving on to Your Hero Academia Enmity. And real quick, what did you think of the video that I created for the next phase?
I really like the timing with the music.
Okay, cool. I've been trying to work hard on that.
Yay.
Yeah. But alrighty, guys. Well, I hope you all have a plus ultra month until our next podcast for Your Hero Academia.
Bye.